Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome to this second ETIP SNET workshop. We are very pleased to be here in Lisbon, in front of so many attendees. First, so for the security, so if we had to leave the room, which I hope not in case of emergency, so there are two emergency exits at the back, the left and the right. Now let's move to the agenda of these 2 days. We will, in the first set of presentations, so it will be the first hour approximately, explain what is the ETIP SNET, why you are here, what is expected from you during these 2 days. And then there will be sessions. So there will be four different sessions, 2 today, 2 tomorrow. First session will be about more or less network. Second one will be about storage and interfaces in the different energy networks. Third session will be, so tomorrow morning, about flexible generation. And the last session will be about digitalization. At the end of these 4 sessions, so tomorrow evening, we will have a wrap-up where we will sum up all the ideas or the remarks that have come up during the workshop. So we expect from you an active participation. And we will display these remarks, these concluding remarks here, and we will discuss them together, and it will be the conclusion of our workshop. So first, let's start with this. Started to need glasses, so sorry. So first, let's start with this first session. Several presentations. There will be also 2 videos. So after Mr. Messias, which I'm going to introduce soon, there will be 1 video by the European Commission and 1 video presenting this ETIP SNET. And then Thierry Leboucher will explain to you what the ETIP SNET is, and I will give more emphasis on the RNI activities of the ETIP SNET, and also I will present on behalf of the European Commission the Bridge Initiative. First, so let's welcome Mr. Aires Messias, which is the head of Innovate European Agency Office, EDP. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Here a small presentation. First of all, good afternoon to everybody, and I'm very pleased to welcome all of you for the works that we have formed in front of us during these next 2 days. I'm very pleased as well to receive you all with this weather. Very interesting that you have available here in Lisbon, in Portugal. And after the hard work that you have for all these 2 days, maybe we can enjoy during the night, and maybe you can meet during the night some stars that are here in Lisbon today, like Madonna or something like that. So, anybody has met Madonna in the night? Nobody? You need to keep trying. So I have a small presentation just to introduction about EDP and the EDP Distribuição. And basically, EDP now is a company with worldwide position, mainly in Europe and the Americas. And basically, its strategy is based on environmental friendly positions, and as demonstrated on the Dow Jones Sustainable Index, where we are in the leadership for last years. On EDP Distribuição, basically is a company, regulated company, basically with operations here in Portugal, but with a strong position in the group, more or less with 20% of margin, EBITDA, and with a little bit more with the number of workers in the entire group, but basically being very efficient. And basically, EDP Distribuição is focusing position of reference at the European level, and that's the reason why we are very pleased to have all of you with us with these works, and we keep trying using these networks, and I will invite you to use these days for networking. Meanwhile, I invite all of you to shake the hand with your neighbor. Maybe it could be a way to proceed with this networking as the first phase and making some new knowledge in this afternoon. I'm not losing too much time with the presentation, but I would like to present to you the main figures about distribution, EDP distribution. And I can say that in the last 15 years, we have more than 5,000 million euros invested, and with a significant improvement, basically, that can be seen in the quality of service, technical quality of service with interruption time. And in the last 15 years now, we are with less than 1 hour, so improving significantly more than about 10 times the situation that we have in the beginning. Basically, with EDP Distribuição, his main demonstration about the involvement with the smart grid is the project InnovGrid. The project InnovGrid started in 2007 and covers all the value chain of EDP Distribuição, from the customer side to the dispatching centers, where we are with a lot of projects trying to get more efficient and more effective service that we're providing to the customers. Over this project, we now have another project that is the project Move to the Future. And basically, this project, Move to the Future, is a project that works over this InnovGrid project focusing the infrastructure. With Move to the Future, we are focusing all the entire organization in order to review all the process and the infrastructure and organization adapting to the concept of smart grid. Basically, this project is a project with more about 60 use cases that we are working and still working in order to adapt both process, the technological and the Move to the Future process. And we are very glad to have all of you with us because we think that InnovGrid project is very well aligned with initiatives at ETIP SNET. And basically, what we are trying is to bridging this gap for a better future and with a lot of electricity, we hope. So it's very short, so thank you very much, and I invite you to enjoy your days here in Lisbon. And thank you for your attention, please.
So thank you, Mr. Messias, for this very interesting presentation of the activities of EDP. Let's move to the next presentation. So it's not a presentation, it is a video from the European Commission by the project officer, which is in charge of the ETIP SNET, or in contact with the ETIP SNET, Rémi Denos.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rémi Denos. I'm working in the Directorate General for Energy at the European Commission. And I wanted to say a warm welcome to you to this workshop from Brussels. Today it's raining in Brussels, so needless to say that I would prefer to be in Lisbon, but this was not possible. This was not possible for me. My main job in the Commission is to draft the Horizon 2020 work program in the field of smart grid and storage. I will say a few words later about what we are preparing. I am also coordinating an initiative called Bridge, where actually every 6 months we gather the project coordinators of the Horizon 2020 project coordinators in the field of smart grid and storage to discuss about non-technological issues, be it regulatory obstacles, let's say successful business models, customer involvement, or how to handle the digital aspect of the project, how to handle information and data. I'm also involved in the European Technology and Innovation Platform on Smart Network for the Energy Transition. This platform will be presented to you today by Thierry Leboucher from EDF. And what the platform does, among others, is to develop technology roadmap and implementation plans. So these documents will be presented to you by Eric Perrano. So for us, this workshop is the occasion to share with you what we are working on at EU level. So to share with you in the country, so not in Brussels, but in Lisbon this time. And it's also the occasion to learn and exchange about the projects that you have in your countries. So I see that in today's agenda, we will hear about projects in Spain by Tecnalia, projects in Ireland by Airgrid, projects in France, or of course in Portugal by EDP. So just to say that it is important for us to stay connected with you, to be aware of this project. So not only myself, but the people who you will meet in Lisbon, which are representing ETIP SNET, Bridge, and so on. And really to have a good knowledge and a good connection between the EU, let's say, projects and the national projects. Horizon 2020, so since I will not be able to be with you in Lisbon today, let me say a few words about what we are preparing. In fact, we are finalizing the call for 2018 and 2019. Hopefully by mid-October, the documentation will be available on the participant portal, and you will be able to read the detailed content of the topics. But nevertheless, I can already share with you where the center of gravity of these topics are. You can guess that flexibility will be, so testing flexibility, demonstrating flexibility in the electricity grid at transmission or distribution level will be key to include the variable renewables, such as the one you have in Portugal with probably a sunny day today, hopefully. And I know Portugal has a lot of wind, so we are looking really to testing solution that by 2030, 2050 will allow the EU system to work with up to 50% of renewables. Other important aspects is regional cooperation. So connections between member states is a flexibility mean which can save, I would say, extra production assets or extra flexibility assets in the country by simply sharing, mutualizing, and operating together the grid across countries. So this will be also a topic, which is, by the way, fully in line with this proposal for the new proposal that the Commission made in autumn last year on new electricity markets as a part of the Clean Energy for All European package. So of course, market dimension will be important in these topics. We want to test new features of the market. We want to test variable prices. We want to see how we can remunerate these new flexibility services that will be increasingly needed. And finally, you will find topics on digitization. I mean, our world, so not only energy and electricity, but the world is increasingly relying on data. And it is very important that we can handle this data in a, let's say, efficient and secure way. So you will see topic on Internet of Things for, let's say, mostly consumer assets. You will find topics on big data. So how do we store, handle, exchange the data? And of course on cyber security. So how do we make sure that this data is protected and well handled? So especially when it comes to the operation of the grid. There will be info days in Brussels on these topics on the 23rd, 24th and 25th. I think the registration is more or less, if not closed, we are probably full, but the presentation will be broadcasted on the website. So I think if you search on the internet at that time, Energy Info Days 2017, you should find a link to the web streaming of the event, and I really encourage you to have a look and look at the topics that we are proposing, and of course to form consortium and apply. Just be aware that the timing is quite tight. I think the first deadline for closure are as early as 5th of February 2018, which just leaves a few months to set up consortium, put forward a proposal, and submit it for evaluation. So this is what I wanted to share with you. I wish you a very fruitful day in Lisbon. I hope you will learn and enjoy the presentation of what we're doing at EU level, and I'm really looking forward from the colleagues who are there, the feedback on the different projects that you are running, and also on the networking and exchanges and links that hopefully this workshop will create. So again, have a good day, have a successful workshop in Lisbon, and see you later in other events, hopefully. Goodbye, cheers.
Well, we can thank Rémi Denos for this very exhaustive speech. I think we can also reassure Rémi, saying that it's very nice weather in Lisbon today. It's sunny, so PV production must be quite good. I don't know if it is windy, so I hope wind production is good also, which challenges the Portuguese network, as we know. So hopefully we'll have some nice presentation that give us some solution to cope with this high share of renewables. Next presentation is once again a video. So it is a video about the ETIP SNET. So Rémi rightly pointed out that the ETIP SNET is the European Technology and Innovation Platform for smart networks for the energy transition. So it is a wide, I would say, consortia of different stakeholders. So Thierry will present what the ETIP SNET does. So let's have first a video which sets the frame of the activities of the ETIP SNET.
Europe has started its energy transition, but what does this actually mean? Energy transition is about allowing renewables to become our main source of energy, while guaranteeing security of supply to all at an affordable price. This can be made possible by interconnecting our whole energy system, integrating novel storage technologies through a digitization of the entire system, and also by developing a genuine European electricity prices signal system. Sounds ambitious? Indeed, there are many unresolved questions. How do we provide reliable electricity when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow? But also, how can we make internet-enabled apps control the energy provided, stored, and used remotely, and have a reliable and efficient system? Enormous challenges arise in terms of regulations, market design, affordability, and reliability. This is why research and innovation is key to achieving our energy transition. Within the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, the European Commission created the European Technology and Innovation Platform on Smart Networks for Energy Transition, a unique platform that gathers a variety of stakeholders in Europe to define the needed technology shift and market-based services. ETIP SNET prioritizes R&I needs based on defined visions of energy's future, but also building on Europe's strengths, like great products and excellent systems integration. Together, we can make Europe's energy transition a success by setting the right conditions to help European industry and research to innovate for the future energy system needed. What are we waiting for? Be part of the solution. Let's plan, innovate, Engage.
So next is Thierry Leboucher. So he's going to tell us more about the ETIP SNET and about these regional workshops. Thierry.
Thank you. Bom dia a todos. Tenho muito prazer em abrir esta reunião em Lisboa. Good afternoon to all those who are online following us on the web streaming that Rémi mentioned. Thank you to EDP for welcoming us in this marvelous building. We are completely in the 21st century. This 21st century is also a challenge for us. This challenge is climate change. You all know the topic. We have to do something if we want to keep under the 2 degrees increase of average temperatures on the globe. We have to reduce CO2 emissions. CO2 emissions has to deal with energy. Energy has to deal with networks. That's why we have this ETIP SNET. So you have the meaning behind me. European Technology and Innovation Platform, Smart Networks for Energy Transition. I think this explains, it has been explained in the video, and you can understand that we want to be active on all the aspects of energy networks to reduce CO2 emissions. So a lot has been said by the video, by Eric, by Rémi, so I will skip quite quickly on the slides. The European Union policy, let's have all the slide and then I will comment. It's not a recent story. Back to 2008, we had the SET plan with ambitious and binding rules, binding objectives for the policy. Then those objectives were even increased in 2014. Not binding, of course, but integrated into a roadmap. And now, what do we have? We have an objective of energy security, solidarity and trust, an integrated European market, energy efficiency of the first issue. Of course, the easiest kilowatt hour to generate is the one that you do not need. And also this transition to a low-carbon society, and then this research and innovation and competitiveness. And this last bullet point is completely what we try to do inside the ETIP SNET. Of course, we are present on the other bullet points, but research, innovation, and competitiveness, this is what we want to work on. So this SET plan has 10 different actions. I will not comment all these actions. With most of them, we have links inside the ETIP SNET, but the one with whom we have the biggest link is clearly number 4. Number 4 is resilience and security of energy system. What do we want? We want for all the Europeans, we want affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy. I think this is the answer that we are together looking for, and you see that a number of these items are clearly in our topics. So let's see what existed before the ETIP SNET. We had a number of different initiatives. The most recent ones were Grid Plus and Grid Plus Storage, and now it was decided and wished by the European Union that all this is mixed into one platform, this ETIP SNET, with a focus on innovation, implementation, and on sector coupling. Sector coupling is important in our minds because we do not think that the solution lies with electricity only or with district heating only. It is a mix of the flexibilities of all these networks that will enable us to reduce carbon CO2 emissions in Europe. So we have, I'll let you read in order to save time. What is our mission? Set a vision, that's important to say what do we want. That's what I'm trying to do today with you. And also engage stakeholders, because if you have a very good vision but no one is okay with this vision, you will never do anything. So what we do is also to prepare an implementation plan. This will be explained by Eric, I think, in the next presentation, but we have to produce something, this innovation roadmap. We have to have a global view on what is done globally in Europe, in various countries of the European Union concerning our topic, and enabling everyone to have access to what is done in other countries. We have to provide input to this Action 4 on resilience and security of the grids. We have to identify innovation barriers, mainly on the regulation and financing aspects. Of course, technical barriers are also important, but most of the time more difficult to overcome. When it has to do with regulation and financing, it's much easier. And we have to make sure that all good innovations in Europe go to the market and are not forgotten or do not disappear in the meantime. And then we have to prepare or work on a consensus of stakeholders at the European level on our topic of smart networks for energy transition in order to be able to reach new decisions that will be favorable for our work. The stakeholders, you can see that this is a very complete list from TSOs, DSOs, consumers, of course. The consumer is almost at the center of this slide, but it is the consumer is at the center of our concerns. But you have also all the manufacturers, the storage community, of course. Today, Rémi told you that I'm from EDF. Today, I'm from EASE, the European Association for Storage of Energy, even if I work for EDF. And of course, regulators are important for us. Generation, flexible generation is also important if we want to find flexibility in the grid. So how do we work? We work with a governing board. The chair of ETIP SNET is Konstantin Stachus from Germany. The vice chair, Konstantin works for ENSOE. Nikos Adziargiriou is from EDSO, from the DSOs, and I'm from EASE, the second vice chair. And then we have 5 working groups. We have the topics on which they work, and you will see that during this meeting, all the agenda is coherent with those working groups, because each part of the workshop will have to deal with one precise working group. And then we have something that is not completely a working group, but that is very important for us. It's the coordination with the national stakeholders, with the different countries, and this is also an important aspect of our work. So today, this is the second workshop organized by the ETIP SNET. The previous one was last week, so not very old. It took place in Aachen, in Germany. The next one will take place in Cyprus, and then we'll have a fourth one in Riga. So you have the countries that are represented at this workshop. So the western part of Europe, Ireland, UK, Portugal, Spain, and France. Sorry. So, Eric will give you a lot of information about our new roadmap. This roadmap has to be developed according to, it's not a job that we can do in an office in Brussels, working among us and trying to exchange ideas. We want to have something very transparent. We want to have a method of work that enables everyone to give his opinion, to give elements that are needed for us. So this is one of the reasons why we organize this workshop. And concerning the agenda, I will leave the floor to Eric to tell you what we will do together this afternoon and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Thierry, for this very clear presentation about the activities of the ETIP SNET. I must apologize, so Thierry reminded me that I forgot to thank EDP for, of course, hosting this workshop in a very nice building and also in a very nice country and a very nice city. So my wife was very angry because she could not follow, and she was very keen to discover Lisbon. Okay, regarding the agenda, so I will not go through the whole agenda, naming every presentation, just the principle. So we have two sessions this afternoon. So as I said, session 1 about the grid. This session will be moderated by Rainer, who is sitting here. Second session about the interfaces and storage. It will be moderated by myself. The format of this session is as follows. The working group, so as you saw, Thierry mentioned that there are 5 working groups in the ETIP SNET, 4 working groups which are, I would say, really active, and the fifth working group, which is more about cross-cutting activities. So each session of the agenda corresponds to the activities of a working group. So working group 1, the grid, working group 2, interfaces and storage, working group 3, flexible generation, and working group 4, digitalization. So the recipe for each session is as follows. Each representative of the ETIP SNET working group makes an introductory speech, setting the frame for the activities of the working group. Then we have 3 to 4 presentations, about 25 minutes, so 20 minutes presentation, 5 minutes for Q&A. And then at the end of the session, we have a wrap-up, which is moderated, so Rainer for session 1 and myself for session 2, where we will discuss some specific points that were mentioned during the presentations. So here we will have the opportunities, and we hope that we have fruitful exchanges, so we have the opportunities to give your advice or to give some insights into the material that has been presented. One last word for those of you who are following the workshop through streaming video. So you're also free to ask questions via Twitter. So these questions will be accounted for, especially during the roundtables. I don't know the hashtag, but I guess the party. ETIP SNET workshops. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so let's move to my first presentation. So Rémi talked about the bridge initiative. So I would say it is a little bit aside this workshop, but it is an information from the EC to tell you what are the activities that are organized by the EC, I would say, to gather the projects which are answering the LCE calls, more or less. So not all projects answering the LCE calls are members of the bridge initiative. Usually, when a project should become a member of bridge, it is specified in the call. So if you answer a call where there is a specific mention to bridge, you will enter the bridge initiative if funded by the European Commission. So the outline, first an introduction about bridge, project overview about this project, the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders involved in the project, and then some statistics about what is the geographic distribution of the projects, per stakeholders, and then the technologies that are addressed by the different bridge projects. So let's start with the introduction. So as Rémi said, so Bridge as an initiative, it's a forum where the participants in some selected LCE projects exchange about different activities, so mostly non-technological cross-cutting activities. So you can see here, as Rémi mentioned, there are 4 working groups, so data management, business models, regulations, customer engagement. And the purpose is really to discuss the barriers, what could be improved in order to deliver conclusions that would help the whole community to speed up market uptake of innovations. Just to tell you briefly what is done in these different working groups. So data management, it is pretty wide. So of course it is about the infrastructure which is needed so that all stakeholders of the energy system can communicate. Regulated players to monitor and control the system, and market players to communicate between themselves and do business. There are also the issues of cybersecurity and data privacy. So we all know that it is very important. And data handling, so everything which has to do with how to handle the data, how it is exchanged, the formats, and so on. Regarding the business models, so it is about description and valuation, of business models. A lot is discussed about the new business models, how to make sure that some technologies or storage, we'll talk about it this afternoon, for instance, really have with a speed up in the market uptake, how to fairly value storage, for instance. And another activity, so a third activity is about a simulation tool, so which has recently been developed to test the profitability of these different business models. So the idea here is to come up with a generic common tool so as to be able to assess the different business models on a similar standpoint. Regulation, so I think it speaks for itself. So here the idea is more or less to exchange on different barriers, especially due to regulations for market uptake of innovations. So work was carried out the last 6 months between the different bridge projects to come up with suggestions to the EC after the recast of the energy directive, market directive, sorry. So to make propositions, what are the typical regulation problems that are encountered in the different demonstration projects which could hinder innovations to come up to the market as fast as possible. So when we discussed these regulatory barriers, not only there were regulatory barriers related directly to the recast of the market directive, but also to other directives. For example, hazardous substances. When we talked about second life batteries in the ELSA project that we'll see. So it's a running project about second life batteries in buildings, so batteries coming from cars. And there is, of course, customer engagement. So you all know that it is important. Rémi stressed it again. So empower the customer. It is one of the main streams of the new market directive. So it is about how to drive customer engagement, how to really foster customer engagement. It is also about behavioral changes and so on. Project overview. So how many projects in Bridge? 32 projects, 379 organizations, that's a lot. And a total EC grant of 337 million, so that's a lot of money, euros. We have categorized by scope and by activities just to show you the distribution of the different projects. So there are projects which are purely dealing with distribution grids, some with distribution storage. So we'll see here the ELSA project I was just mentioning, which is about distributed storage in buildings, as I said. There are projects about transmission grids, about large-scale storage. So here I see, for example, the Migrate project, which is about how to operate a transmission network with no rotating machines. So how do you operate a network where only generating units are connected to the grid through power electronics? There are projects about heating and cooling and so on. And there are projects which both address distribution grids and distributed storage. For example, Interflex, which is dealing with flexibility for DSOs using, among other, storage, because we all know that flexibility is not only a question addressed by storage. Who are the stakeholders involved in the projects? Well, I will not go through this list of stakeholders. So it's all stakeholders. I see regulators. I think this is very, very peculiar. So are there any regulators in the room? No. Yes? No regulator. Well, there are no regulators in the projects, as a matter of fact, so they are probably not allowed to participate, or maybe not allowed, but it is not convenient to participate in project when you have to regulate and give opinion. But most of the time, as you know, and you participate in project, they are in an advisory board, or they can give advice about the projects. So if we look at this data, so we see that research and innovation stakeholders, a lot of them, so I was talking to Nuno from Nestor, so you participate in a lot of projects, so research institutions are well represented. Then technology providers, and that's a good thing, that's really what the EC wants. They want products and they want new activities and jobs at the end of the day. Market players, of course. Local energy communities, good thing also. It is one of the I would say interesting point in the recast of the directive. There are 2 articles dedicated to local energy communities, at least one specific. What about the geographical distribution? So here I will try to be a little bit fast. You can look at the slides afterwards. So this gives you an idea of the countries that have the highest number of stakeholders participating in the project. So I see that the Iberia Peninsula is well represented. So Spain and Portugal also, there are quite a lot of stakeholders. Germany and, of course, because of the historical development of renewables, Italy also. France is not bad, but not as good as Germany, so we have to catch up. What about the demo sites per country? So here it is about the same, I would say, as the stakeholders. So a lot of demo projects in Spain and in Germany. It's not so strange, and we know that it is the countries in Europe that have the highest share of renewables, at least if we add wind and PV. I mean wind and PV. What are the technologies which are covered by the bridge project? So I would say all technologies for consumers, grid technologies, so we see here a few. Storage technologies, both at large scale, distributed, generation technologies, so green technologies, of course, and technologies, so it's not technologies, but technologies which are related enablers, mainly ICT for the participation of market players. I'll just give you an example about the share of the different technologies in the different projects. So it's a number of projects. So it is quite well balanced. I would say if you add both distributed and large-scale storage, so storage, grid technologies, technologies for consumer market, and generation technologies. So I guess the EC has done a good job in selecting the project. Everybody will be satisfied. Oops, sorry. Just to give you an example, so I will stop here about grid technologies. So there are 24 projects. So just to give you an example, there are a lot of statistics. So I guess you can download them on the bridge site. There is a brochure. So here you see that microgrids and network management, monitoring and control are really the hot topics, at least in the last 3 years for the calls. I would thank you for attention. So for this presentation, you can download on the information on the website. And I will stop here. So, maybe we can take quickly a couple of questions about if there are questions about the bridge initiative. Otherwise, I will move to the next presentation. So I guess you are all very active in the Iberia Peninsula and especially Portugal in European projects. So you know about the bridge initiative. Surely some of you participate through project in this initiative. So, yes, sorry. I didn't hear because it's. will stay on stage. Sorry, Jesus, I can't hear. With the glasses, the ears.
Sorry, no, I asking you related to, I see a big number of projects that you have presented here.
Yes.
The question is just related to, in comparison with the real projects that's existing at European level, we are able to identify, we are covering, or we have collected 80%, 60%, or what is the representative level that you consider that you have reached in this project related to the real existing projects at European level?
You mean all the LC projects?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Daniel, do you have the figure?
I don't think that it's like representative, but actually the bridge projects, the 32 projects that we have in the initiative are the biggest one of Europe, so with the biggest budget and many demo sites. But as Eric explained before, actually the decision of integrating the bridge initiative, it's chosen by the Commission. No?
It's specified in the calls.
Yes, in the call you can be able to participate, but actually I think, or I figured out personally, that it depends on the strategies of the European Commission each year. So actually if they want to develop some branches in the call of this year, I don't know, for instance, let's say I think that this year storage is a really key issue, so the projects dealing with the storage technologies will be favored not to integrate the bridge initiative. For example, last year we're more related to distribution and also to integrate some transmission projects to make this link and interfaces. So I think it depends every year, but cipher a number we cannot tell you.
Yeah. But we'll find out. Daniel will find out. He's our bridge guy and he holds all the numbers and the statistics. But as he said, it's decided by DEC, and what I could add is that usually it's demonstration projects. It has to be a project with strong demo sites, so quite high TRLs. But you can see here also that there is, for example, the NIAD project, which is about developing, if I remember right, sodium air battery. It's a CA project. It's selected and the TRL is not very high. So it's decided by DEC. Okay, maybe let's move to the next presentation because we have some time to catch. Oops, sorry. That's the. Could you move, please, to the next presentation? Because that was backup slides. Thank you. So next presentation. Now we go back to the ETIP SNET. So it is the follow-up of Thierry's presentation. So I will try to explain to you what we are doing in terms of road mapping and implementation plans. So I would say the two main or the main outcome of the ETIP SNET and the support action, so Intensis for You actually, which is the project my company belongs to, and Rainer also, and Zabala, who is organizing the workshop. So we are a support action. We are supporting the ETIP SNET. So part of our work is to come up with an updated roadmap. So there is an existing ETIP SNET roadmap at the moment. So I will explain roughly what it contains. Most of you have certainly read it. One of the main tasks for the ETIP SNET is to update this roadmap in the coming years, so in the 2 or 3 years, in 3 years to come. And to produce implementation plans, which are documents that precise the activities specified in the roadmap that should be launched. And then I will also explain to you how, so Thierry briefly touched it, how this exercise is linked to our workshop today, and what is expected from you today also. So let's go. So the content, so I will briefly present the existing roadmap and the IP, which is about to be published. So actually next week at the Utility Week in Amsterdam. Then we will talk about the coming implementation plan, and then what is expected from you in this workshop. So let's start with the existing roadmap. So Thierry showed you that the ETIP SNET is the fusion of the European Electricity Grid Initiative and the EDP Smart Grid. So now DEC has a single organization to exchange with. So the first roadmap, which was written by the EEGI with the support of Grid Plus, which was a project, was published in 2013, and it covered a 10-year period. So these roadmaps, they cover a 10-year period. So the main purpose in this roadmap was to specify RNI activities which would help to integrate renewables in the energy system. So every year, an implementation plan was published, and this implementation plan covered a period of 3 years. So it was a rolling window, 3 years, every year. And an implementation plan specifies the RNI activities extracted from the roadmap, which have to be launched during the next 3 years because of their urgency status. Last year, so was published, and it was actually this year, but it was endorsed last year and published this year, so endorsed by the governing board of the ETIP SNET and published at the beginning of the year. The updated roadmap, so this is the roadmap which exists today, and the scope was broadened. So it was about flexibilities, but mostly the integration of storage, but of course considering all other flexibility means. So interaction with other energy networks, and the other flexibility means such as flexibility you can find from the grids with equipments like FACS or from demand response and so on. So this roadmap can be downloaded today on the ETIP SNET website. The implementation plan, so which goes along with this roadmap, is going to be published so next week at the utility week. So I will present also the content. The work that Thierry was talking about, so this update of this roadmap. So this is something which is going to take place now during the next 3 years, and it is with a widened scope. So it is about the integration of the whole energy system. So now the purpose will be to consider the energy system as a whole, with possibly so the electricity grid as the backbone of the system. So this will be discussed surely during the roundtables. Rainer, I see that you are smiling. So electricity is the backbone of the energy system. So it was the hypothesis of the current roadmap. So in the current roadmap, if you look at it, it is about transmission, distribution, and everything is organized in different chapters along the transmission system and the distribution system. And we address all flexibility mean, as I just said, with a focus on energy storage on the one hand and the interaction with other energy networks. So it means the gas networks and the heat networks at a local level. Of course, there is ICT, which is a cross-cutting issue, and it is an enabler for the development of the energy system. So if we go into the existing roadmap, so I will be very brief, sorry. I will just say in words, so most of you I'm sure know it. I will just show you where flexibility is addressed. So in the existing roadmap, you have two different big parts. You have a transmission level, distribution level. So here we concentrate on transmission level. Transmission level, there are 5 chapters, one dealing with the modernization of the network, so new grid components, security and system stability, you all know what it means. Power system flexibility, so this is about flexibility. Then about market, so it is what is called C4, so the chapters are called cluster. So C doesn't stand for chapter, but for cluster. And C5, so chapter 5 or cluster 5, which is about digitalization. So if we look at the chapter 3, flexibility is addressed in different, I would say, sections. So it describes the RNI activities. So a section is called the functional objectives. So if you hear this word, you know that it is a section in a chapter of the roadmap. So there is a section on storage, one on demand response, one of forecasting tool for renewable production, one on the interaction with other energy networks, and one about thermal power generation. As you know, thermal power generation is a hot topic right now. These machines have to run maybe, I heard that, I think it's you, Jesus, that said just 15% of the existing thermal power plants are operating right now. So it is an issue for most of the power plants, and they have to increase their flexibility because they have to run fewer hours during the year and under stringent conditions. For distribution, so there are 4 chapters. So one chapter about the integration of smart customers. So it is a demand response and energy efficiency in buildings. So it is not really energy efficiency in terms of thermal insulation. It is about how you manage the building so as to have a given load curve. There is a second chapter about the integration of renewables and the new uses. So flexibility here at the distribution level is addressed from renewables. So renewables, of course, they bring flexibility, storage. Transport, so EVs. Of course, if you manage the charging of your EVs, you can also bring some flexibilities. Other energy networks, so here it is more about heat. So 3 HPs, how you couple heat and electricity production. And small-scale thermal power generation. Network operation, so this is another chapter. So there's this flexibility coming from the grid, from the different grid components. And there is also flexibility from asset management. So you all know that, depending on how you schedule your asset management, you can also bring some flexibility in the operations. So let's stop now with the existing roadmap. So if you have further questions, I will be able to answer them during the workshops. And you can also send email if you have a question about the roadmap. Now let's discuss the process towards the next roadmap. So it is, I would say, a several-step process. So first, we will publish a vision. So it should be published, I would say, what did we say, Rainer, in March next year? So I would say during the first semester of next year. So this ETIP SNET will give its vision, its long-term vision, 2030, 2050, on how the energy system should look like. So it's really a vision. It has to deal with the disruptive issues. Maybe there will be an energy system operator. Norella, maybe you don't agree. Norella, which represents, sorry. No, it's just a joke. So the vision is here to bring a very disruptive points of view so as to be able to program the RNI activities for the next decade, in 2 years from now. So this is the second step. Then there will be implementation plan, so the third step. So I have underlined the existing documents, and then it is intended that this new roadmap, all these specified RNI activities, they will feed the EC work programs. So here I will come to your contribution, to your expected contribution today. So for the vision, it will be an exercise between the different experts of the ETIP SNET working groups. Here, it will be a much broader consultation. So as you know, the member states will have their say, the ETIP SNET experts also for the working groups. Public consultation, so we have just had a public consultation on our implementation plan. So the roadmap will also go through a public consultation. So when it is published, you will have the opportunity to give some feedback. And this document, they will also lean on the recommendations that will be formulated during this workshop. So during this regional workshop, what we expect is to hear about not only what we hear at European level, in European projects, but at national level, or regional level in the sense of the EU, so the region that Thierry showed in his slides. We want to hear about the lesson learned. We want to hear about, according to you, what are the further RNI needs that are not necessarily addressed in the existing roadmap. We want to know about how you deploy your innovations for market uptake. And we also want to hear about barriers to innovation deployment, because barriers are not the same in every country. And you can always have good experiences in countries that can help other countries. There is also a task which is called the monitoring of projects. So what we also do in this ETIP SNET is that we monitor all projects, including national projects. So what does monitoring mean? It means that we assess what the projects have brought in terms of knowledge when we look at the different RNI activities which are specified in the implementation plans and in the roadmaps. So the purpose is to make sure that when you specify an activity, an RNI activity and an implementation plan, or in the next roadmap, it is an activity that has not been previously covered by projects. So this is the task of the monitoring process. And the idea here is not only to monitor European projects, but to monitor your projects, national projects. And this is about this constellation process. So I will go very fast through this slide. So tell me if you have not understood it. So it is a try. I tried next workshop and people did not really understand it. So tell me if it is fuzzy, because it will help us to improve this presentation. As you saw, the last roadmap was structured with distribution level, transmission level, chapters in each these two big parts, and functional objectives, so sections to address the topics. Here, what we would like to do is to change this structure and to address the different RNA activities by different layers. So here, the system layer, so the hardware, the distribution network, the transmission network, but also the other energy networks, the connections between the energy networks, generation, storage, customers, so there is nothing new. And we would like to address the market and the ICT as cross-cutting activities. And we will differentiate between ICT activities related to the communication between the different market players and the regulated players, so as to make sure that there is an operational market. And what we call the cyber-physical layer, which is really the ICT, which is dedicated to the regulated players. So the ICT infrastructures and the software which are needed in the equipment to make sure that the network is stable. So that's why we call it cyber-physical layer, because now in each piece of equipment, as you know, there is hardware and software to help operate the equipment. So now we'll go through the implementation plan. So an implementation plan has been published to support the existing roadmap. So when we started to brainstorm about this implementation plan, we got 56 topics, and it was structured more or less with the old structure of the roadmap. What we decided to do is to completely change this structure, a little bit in line with the tentative structure for the coming roadmap that I have proposed, some food for thought. So we propose to structure the new implementation plan with several layers. So first layer, the market layer, second layer, digitalization, third layer, the interactions between the different components of the network, and then topics for each component of the network. And when we say component, it's an extended definition. It's about the grid, it's about generation, it's about storage, and so on. So today we have 39 topics. We were able to reduce and to merge the number of topics. So I invite you to read the implementation plans when it is published next week. So we try to visualize where the 39 topics are in terms of layers. So as you see, there are 3 topics for market. There are several topics for digitalization, and there are a lot of topics. Most of the topics are in the, I would say, in the hardware layer. So they are really dealing with the components and the interfaces between the different components of the system. So I will just give you 3 examples. So one example, which is related to the market design. So it's a very interesting topic. So the market design for trading of heterogeneous flexibility products. So the idea is that you could trade something that contains kilowatt hour, but not only in terms of electricity, but maybe heat and also gas. The second topic I would like to stress, so topic 9, which is in the second layer, so the communication layer, is about cyber security. So here it's cyber security of critical infrastructure. What happens if geeks come in a power station and start to take control of the power station? Maybe it could endanger the stability and the integrity of the grid. And for example, the last topic, topic 7, also about design and demonstration of grid digitalization. So which is about the same topic, so it's how to put digital technologies inside the grid. To conclude, so let's tell you what is expected today, once again, in this workshop. So we want to exchange. So we want to hear about both your negative and your positive experiences. So if something has failed, it is not I would say, a fully negative experience. It has also a positive side because you know not what to do. And this would be interesting to share these experiences. What we want to do, so as I already explained, we want to discover national projects which have a strong EU added value, so where the outcomes could be shared over the whole European community. So to feed in this future monitoring exercise and appraise the coverage of the RNA activities specified in the roadmap and implementation plans. We want, as a result, you to help us to specify the next RNA activities in the coming implementation plans and roadmaps. We want to identify together the barriers to innovation. So this is something which is important and which is, I would say, one of the core activities of this 5th working group in the ETIP SNET, how to bring innovations to the market. We want to know about the good practices in your pilots and in your demonstrations. And we want to know about the implementation plans for innovation. So if you have innovations and they are going to be installed, please tell us by when and how. I thank you for your attention. We are still late, but maybe we can take a couple of questions before we move to session 1. No question? So the new structure of the roadmap, it was really fuzzy. So maybe I will have to work with my team and on these slides to make it clearer. So if there are no. You are going to rescue me. Thank you for that.
Maybe just a little bit provocative, even because we are part of the ETIP SNET and our team in the research center have a contribution to the implementation plan and even to the architecture. But I was trying to bring a little bit out of the box look into the architecture, and I was wondering, how do new players or future players in the market, like a Tesla or a Google company, would look into such an architecture, and how would they recognize themselves as playing or being able to play there? Or are we opening it enough to allow those new potential players to tap in and to have a kind of APIs or application protocol interfaces so that they can contribute with value added, having in mind the consumer in the center of all these architecture? So I'm not sure if we have the answer now, but I don't know if you have had some thoughts on that as well.
I see your point. Yeah, thank you for this question. I think they fully fit. So the activities could fit in the different layers. So of course, they're going to become market players. They're also active in the ICT layer and of course in storage. So I think it fits more or less, but this is for food for thought. We really want to have a different structure of the roadmap. So the idea is just to test this structure, and please come to me and tell me if something is not clear or if you have a suggestion for improvement. It would be most welcome. Okay, thank you. So let's move to session 1, which is moderated by Rainer Bacher. Thank you, Rainer.
Welcome to this so-called project session number 1, where we will talk about the position of the flexible grid in this complex environment. I noticed, when you were asked questions to what Eric was presenting, it's hard to ask questions in this complex world. Where are we in the discussions? What do we concentrate on? Are we talking about the grid, storage, Western region, Germany, about digitalization, many, many topics which came together in this field. And let me just position now this session, which will come now, and the other 3 sessions again, so that we know where we are, very briefly. And then we will start with the first presentation. We ETIP SNET tries to link stakeholders on one side, and on the other side, it tries to develop roadmaps, implementations plans to support the European Commission in finding out about the right R&D questions. So this session here kind of tries to mix the two worlds. We are in the western region of Europe, and you know we have been in the central region with Germany, Austria, Belgium, and these countries. We will go to the southern region, and we will go to the north of Europe. And we think it is worth doing so because we may find out about issues of a region which we don't find in the other region. So today, please, when we discuss things, let's try what does this region, this western region of Europe, you know, the map where we are, where are the questions which may not be asked in the other regions? Who knows? Where are the properties which provoke special research for this region? Maybe there is some, maybe there is none, but this is now the place to do. And the other thing which we want to concentrate on is work group 1 for now, for the next 2-3 hours. Afterwards, we talk about the storage, not now. Now we talk about the smart, flexible grid, whatever this is in the future. Afterwards, we talk about storage, flexible storage. Of course, it is mixed, we know, but we try to concentrate here. And tomorrow, we talk about flexible generation and the whole digitalization, or they call it digital energy. So the challenge will be to concentrate on the region where we are now, on the western region, with a lot of sun, but also other features, you know, which may be of specialty here. And we are concentrating on work group 1. And with that, let me start to give you the order of what we will do. First, work group 1 will be presented by a member, a very active member, by Rafael Rinaldi. He will give an overview of what the work group is doing. This is also important for you, the audience. Maybe you want to contribute in these work groups in the near future. Maybe you do already contribute. These work groups really try to represent stakeholder interests in the area of flexible networks. And then we will go into 3 practical presentations, project presentations, which came from this area. We selected them. It's not fully covering the whole field, but maybe it provokes certain questions, and this is important. In this session, we want interaction with you. We want interaction, and this happens as follows. Let's do the presentation, each after the other, and after each presentation, you can ask questions, a first set, 5 minutes or so, and in the end, we wrap up in the roundtable discussion, which comes after all the presentations. And in the roundtable, we will have all the project presenters, plus 2 or 3 representatives of our key associations, which are part of the ETIP SNET. So there should be enough room for you to openly ask questions. There are no wrong questions. Let's discuss issues here. We are in a complex world, and that's why we are here for. And not just present things and then go home again. We should use this audience here to talk to each other. So with that, let me come to the first presentation. This will be done by the work group 1 representative. Today it's Rafael Rinaldi from NL. Please.
Okay. Thank you, Rainer. Good afternoon. Okay, thank you for attending this meeting. Today I'm replacing Vicente Gonzalez, by the way. So Vicente Gonzalez should have presented the working group 1. And so Vicente Gonzalez is from Red Eléctrica de España and is representing ENSOE. And I'm the vice chair of this working group, and I'm representing EDSO. I work for NL, the Global Infrastructures and Networks Division. And so through EDSO Association, I'm also involved in this working group. Okay, so I don't want to repeat what has been said before, but I can just recap that the ETIP SNET is, as the role of the ETIP SNET is to guide the research, development, and innovation to support Europe's energy transition. That's the global framework. And within the ETIP SNET, the working group 1 is focused on the optimization of the whole energy system. So focus on the system aspects, addressing the main functionalities, the quality and the efficiency of the electricity system, and to consider all the benefits of its integrations with the other sectors. So coupling with the other sectors like gas and heat, for example. The working group 1 has made a huge work already this year. So we made a contribution to 3 main activities. First of all, the ETIP SNET Vision, which is an ongoing activity, and we'll see more in details just afterwards. The SET Plan Action 4.1 Implementation Plan, and also the SET Plan Action 4.2 Implementation Plan. Here we are talking about the implementation plans of the SET plan and not the ETIP SNET. Next year, we will focus on monitoring and making available the exchange of best practices and knowledge sharing between ongoing projects. We will give a contribution to update the next 10 years ETIP SNET roadmap, so 2020-2029, if I'm not wrong. And we will interact with the European Commission in order to help the definition of the next framework program, so the next program after Horizon 2020. So I will introduce very briefly the Working Group 1 mission into the details of the mission, the specific objectives, and then just explain the ongoing activities that have been performed this year. So the specific objectives are related to the energy system in terms of mid and long-term business and technology trends in order to make the electrical system much affordable as possible. So make the investment and operation costs optimized, taking into account all the actors and users connected to the network. So it means system development scenarios, optimizing network planning, the operation, the observability and the control of the network, the asset management, and the flexibility as seen from a system aspect and the resilience of the system. So focusing on system aspects, the Working Group 1 follows on the Action 4.1, Action 4, which means 4.1 and 4.2. So grid smartening, what does it mean? It means enhance grid observability and controllability to bring the system an improved forecasting and operation, tools for managing the variability and uncertainty of the operational conditions at all time scales, and also to increase the grid hosting capacity. Beyond that, we also evaluate and try to optimize the economic efficiency of the system thanks to ICT components. So including also the new tools like we are talking about digitalization of the network, and also taking into account an adequate market framework. So defining future market frameworks to enable this to happen. There are 4 aspects that should be addressed by Working Group 1. So without entering too much into details, we have these 4 pillars, which are the power system modernization and the increased cross-border connection capacity, which means planning like high electricity, high voltage highways, both in AC, DC technologies, and at the same time decreasing, if possible, the environmental footprint, for example. The transmission and distribution network expansion and investment based on a connect and manage approach, which means that we should move. We have already moved from a fit and forget approach to a connect and manage way. So this means a close collaboration and cooperation between TSOs and DSOs and between those 2 actors with the users connected to the network. The integration within the energy system is understood as the synergy that could be found between the electricity system and the other sectors like gas, heat, and their interfaces. And of course, all of this relied on an adequate market framework. In 2017, so this year, we have made some contributions to help the definition of the current of the nearly released working program of the European Commission Horizon 2020, 2018-2020. We have made comments on the intensities for EU implementation plan, which means the ETIP SNET implementation plan. And then we have divided the group. We have made 3 task forces within the working group because we are leveraging on a pool of 40 experts, more or less, in working group 1. So we tried to make small groups dedicated on specific targets. So the first one is the collaboration of the ETIP on the ETIP SNET vision of the energy system. So the process was started, and the vision document should be elaborated, and the first draft should be prepared, I think, for January 2018, and should be finalized and approved by June 2018, if the timeline is still there, what was agreed some months ago. The next task force is dedicated to the inputs on the temporary working group 4, action 4.1, refining the targets based on an output-based scenario. So we already had targets in the past, but now we try to make them more tangible and concrete. So what we want to achieve with tangible results, so it's an output-based approach in order to allow the European Commission also to measure the results of the R&D initiatives. And the last task force is the definition of the targets on 4.2, which because those targets were not fully defined in the past, so it's always output-based, but also here we are defining the targets. And also the working group 1 is giving support to the Intensives for EU team, so to support the European Commission in managing all the relationships also with the stakeholders and organizing and participating in workshops. So just to focus on the ETIP SNET vision, I think Eric and Rainer already explained a little bit before, so just to summarize, the vision document is a high-level document and is based on existing scenarios. It's not a new scenario, but it should rely on existing scenarios such as Highway 2015, the 10 years development plan 2016-2018, and as well as the other European existing scenarios. So it should consider the targets that we want to achieve until 2030 and 2050. And this should be in line with the existing vision that was released 10 years ago by the ETP Smart Grids. And it should be a document which looks like the vision document that was developed at European level for the aviation sector, which is a good benchmark to have a very short, precise, and challenging document. So this is the objective. I hope this was more or less what was defined within the Intensives for EU project. Okay, so the next task force, so updating the targets for the action 4.1 and 4.2. In October last year, the European Commission, within the SET plan, released a strategic declaration on strategic targets in the context of an initiative of energy systems. Based on this document, we are going into the details of what does it mean. So for targets for action 4.1, we are talking about grid observability and controllability, demand response, flexible generation, and energy storage. And all of these topics are covered by the working groups of the ETIP SNET. For action 4.2, we are talking about the integrated local and regional energy systems. So synergies with other sectors and also considering the specificities of local or regional requirements and particularities. So not only it's still at European level, but as we said before, we are also focusing on the different regions of Europe. And so about the targets, a huge work was made already in April, May, and now the action should be finalized by the end before the end of October, and if I'm not wrong, it should be presented at the beginning of November in Bratislava for the set plan. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Raphael. Just wait a second. I think let's use the format urgent questions now, but let's just have in mind we can come later, in the roundtable discussion, we can talk again about maybe global questions, what Workgroup 1 could or should do in the future. That would be a very nice contribution in this little session. What are the urgent questions to Raphael of Workgroup 1, please? Yeah, it's hard to say when something is urgent, but you can just whatever you have on the mind. 1, 2 questions can be asked now. Otherwise, we come back in the round table. No, if not, fine. Thank you very much, Raphael. No problem. We will come back later. I think we can talk about the real need, what Workgroup 1 can contribute here. But we need the workgroups very urgently. So now let's come to the first project presentation of the Western region. This is about the so-called REN and Nesta projects. They are running in Portugal, and they are presented by Rui Alves from Portugal. Thank you. Can I just interrupt you? For the questions, we have also the internet audience in this room. So later we will come back with questions from you, the audience, but we will also collect in the background the most interesting questions coming via Twitter. You'll find the hashtag displayed here. It's ETIP SNET Workshop. So please, I'm talking now to the internet audience. You can ask, put in questions. They will be collected, and depending on the case, they come later to me in the roundtable discussion. Thank you very much. I give the word to you.
Yeah. So, hello everyone, I'm Rui Alves, and I'm with R&D Nestor. And for those who might not know us, we are the innovation center of the transmission system operator REN. So we have a close cooperation with them, and we work on innovation and research topics according to their needs. And today's presentation will be on some of the projects we have ongoing in different stages of development with REN, and showing how we are bringing innovation to the field. Okay, so we will be talking mainly about three different projects in distinct areas we are having at the national level, and pretty much related with our national context. So in the first project we are working with the transmission system operator on renewable energy management tools. So tools to facilitate the integration of renewables, and how these tools can help the transmission system operator in better integrate variable renewables. Yeah, and this is very much aligned with our national context of high wind power penetration. And then a second project called Power System Simulation and Lab, in which we look in two distinct main topics. On one hand, on the hot topic of TSO-DSO collaboration and how this collaboration can be fostered in the future, what are the benefits of fostering this collaboration. And then a second topic in the scope of this project, which was the development of state-of-the-art lab for expanding R&D Nestor capabilities in terms of testing and simulating smart grid concepts. And lastly, we have the project called Substation of the Future, which intends to review the concept of the substation, the future transmission substation, and we are trying to align it with transmission system operator needs and how these substations can become more smarter, sustainable, and hopefully safer as well. So I will start with the first one. So in the first project, as I said, it is targeting the challenge of variability from renewables, and we are working on tools and practical tools, existing tools on the transmission system operator, but also developing new tools and evolving existing tools, such as wind power and solar power forecasting tools, tools for dimensioning the reserve needs of the system according to this variability of wind and solar power. And we had some demonstrations with PV and wind power plants to assess how these power plants can actually support the grid in terms of frequency and voltage control aligned with requirements from the TSO. So these are some of the tools we are developing in this project. But firstly, we talk about the motivations for this project and what are the challenges that motivated this project. So one is, of course, the uncertainty brought by wind, and this is something probably you have already heard 1,000 times just today. So yeah, so the challenge is the uncertainty, of course, but is the amount of wind that we are integrating in the Portuguese system. So we have roughly more than 5 gigawatts of installed capacity in wind, which assumes a considerable share of the generation capacity in the country. So we actually have times in which the wind power alone is enough to supply the national demand. So we need to balance the system and to keep on integrating higher amounts. And this is what this project is looking at as well, how to develop tools that can promote this higher integration of wind. And then a second aspect that motivated the project is the expected boost in PV capacity in upcoming years in Portugal. So the PV is still at a rather low level in the country, and yeah, this is not for now a matter of real concern, such as the case of wind. But we expect this capacity to increase significantly in the coming years, given the competitiveness of the technology, and we are already having some of these technologies coming to the market and competing with the market without incentives. So we will not be surprised if this amount will rise for a range between 8 and 10 times current capacity. So we really expect this PV capacity to increase significantly and become a real issue for the transmission system operator. And of course, a third one that is keeping the system balanced with all these variable renewables coming into the system. So the mix of these, when we will have a system with high wind and also PV power coming in the system, how can we balance all this? Yeah, and some of the solutions and achievements that we are developing in the project, one is of course related with wind power forecasting tools. So we are supporting the transmission system operator with the enhancement of existing tools, either deterministic tools, improving forecasting errors and so on. But we are also looking at different approaches such as probabilistic forecasting tools to adopt a more risk-based approach in how these can support the operation of the system. And then we are looking at solar power forecasting tools. We have two of the biggest challenges are, on one hand, reducing the forecasting errors for the solar forecasting tools, but also increase the coverage rate of our solar forecasting tool. So as we have more wind power plants being connected to the system, there's a need to follow up on these and keep on forecasting all these power plants. So this is also a challenge at the moment as we start to integrate more PV power plants in the system. And yeah, another innovation the project is looking at is the installation of sky cameras for taking snapshots of the sky and estimating the cloud indexes or the clear sky index and analyzing the motion of the clouds and how these can actually impact the production of PV power plants. So we have one installed near one of the biggest PV power plants in the country, and we are analyzing how these clouds are affecting the PV production and how this kind of images can support the transmission system operator in better forecasting the solar power. We also look at data coming from satellites and image, so we are also looking at that. And then the project also developed other tools for, as I mentioned, for dimension the reserve needs of the system, having into account these wind and solar forecasting errors. So taking as input the probabilistic forecasting tools that we have developed so that we can dimension the reserves of the system in a risk-based approach, let's call it like that. And then in this project we have as well cooperated with manufacturers from wind turbines and photovoltaic inverters to see how these technologies can actually support the system in terms of frequency control and voltage control, and how these technologies will be able to meet the requirements that are now fulfilled by traditional generation. And yeah, and currently the project is looking at the development of tools for assessing the inertia of the system. So as we have less rotational mass in the system and more power electronics interface devices, so there's a need to continuously monitoring the system in terms of inertia. What is the inertia connected to the system so that we can keep on operating the system stable. So these are some of the tools, some of the innovations that we are developing to integrate higher amounts of renewables in the system. Yeah, so looking at the second project, as I've mentioned, we are looking at two different dimensions. On one hand, how these TSO-DSO collaboration can be improved for the benefit not only of the operators but of the consumer, and how all the stakeholders in the sector can benefit from this cooperation. And then we, in this project, took the opportunity to develop a smart grid lab to test some concepts that we are developing in-house. So starting by this challenge, we looked to it from the data exchange point of view. So how this collaboration can be fostered with more data being exchanged between the transmission system operators and increase the observability on both sides. How we have looked at it, so we have assessed what's coming in the network codes and operational guidelines in which these data exchange requirements are already somehow defined. And we have mapped these requirements for the Portuguese reality. So this is a rather important step, as we all know that the interface, the TSO-DSO interface is rather heterogeneous at the European level. So it is an important step to map these requirements to the national level, and that's what we did. And we have linked these requirements with real physical devices at the interface between the two networks and defined, according to the codes and to the requirements, which measurements should be exchanged and for which scope. Is it for real time? Is it for planning? Which granularity? And so on and so forth. And then we have developed a gap analysis to assess the current practices and compare current practices with what is coming in the network code. So we were able to identify how this data exchange could be improved for the benefit of both. And then by doing an exercise of selecting a pilot area and applying these data exchange requirements, we were able to assess the benefits of the different stakeholders given an environment of improved data exchange. Yeah, and based on an improved environment of data exchange between the transmission and distribution system operators, there's a possibility to develop a set of tools that take advantage of this improved collaboration. And in this project, we also develop a set of tools that take advantage of this scenario. And and one of the tools was related with the optimization of power curtailment. Let's say we have an overload problem in one of the networks near the interface. Then how can we optimize resources at both transmission and distribution network in an optimal way, rather than looking only at the transmission or distribution levels, optimizing them individually? How can we optimize these resources globally in an environment of cooperation? So this is an example of other tools that we are developing for coordination. And then the other issue we are addressing is, let's say, motivated by this increasing complexity in power grids that are becoming more interconnected on one hand and distributed on the other end. So for this and for meeting some of these challenges, we have developed a real-time power system simulation lab in R&D Nestor, and we have developed it from scratch up to a point that is now up and running and supporting some of R&D Nestor projects. So what is the purpose of this lab? What are its capabilities? So some of the capabilities is the ability to simulate the power system from large scale to other phenomena such as power electronics. So we have huge computational power to test and simulate the power system. And we can actually test several devices, as you can see in the picture. We can connect them to a simulation environment and see how they interact with the simulation environment. We can, for example, simulate a short circuit in the Portuguese transmission network and see how the physical devices, if it's tripping or not, how the physical devices is actually responding. And then another important aspect of the lab is the capability to simulate communication networks. So as we are seeing this digitalization of the system, how these two worlds can interact with each other. So we can actually simulate the communication networks of power system, let's say inside the substation. We can simulate this network and see how it behaves, and we can even as well connect to the simulation environment physical communication devices for the so-called hardware in the loop testing, and we can test switches. So at the end, we can have an environment in which we simulate real devices from the power system world, and we can as well simulate from the communication world, and we can merge them and test smart grid concepts, having the both topics in mind. And then in this lab, we can test several protocols and several standards. And this brings us to the next project, that is the Substation of the Future project, in which we are taking advantage of our lab capability to test some concepts that we are developing. So this project aims to build a new vision for the substation of the future, for the transmission substation of the future. And it is, as I said, it gets lots of inputs from transmission system operator. And the issue is how to evolve this system and test it adequately before implementing it in the system. And this is something that the project is looking at. And the motivations for this project is obviously the need to modernize the power system and fully digitalize it. And in the context of the substation, digitalize the secondary system of the substation. And this is an important need and an important motivation of the project. And then with it comes the standardization. So using standards inside the substation for interoperability, for example, such as the IEC 61850, which also allow us to remove all the copper and in the majority of the copper in the secondary system of the substation, but also test other protocols and standards for time synchronization inside the substation. And because with full digitalization, we want to keep on increasing the reliability of the system. In this project, we want to understand how this digitalization really impacts the power system. So we don't only want to fully digitalize, but we want to understand how this can be done and how can this really impact the power system and not compromise its performance. So some of the achievements of the project was first to build a new vision for the substation of the future, and this was done we have consulted several stakeholders from different TSOs and industrial manufacturers. We have conducted several surveys, collecting answers from them for getting inputs, workshops. So at the end, we were able to define our own vision for the substation of the future, defining updated requirements, KPIs, and functionalities. And then it was the time to bring this to life, let's say, and design the system. So we wanted to design the substation of the future concept for different topologies of substations in the transmission system. So we have clustered them according to what we have in the country and clustered them in small, medium, and large in 3 different topologies and designed the concept according to this. And then we looked into much detail in the secondary system of the substation, defining a new architecture, defining the functionalities of this system, and specifying it according to the IEC 61850 standard for interoperable system, so that we can have different vendors communicating with each other inside the same substation. Then we also looked at redundancy aspects from both the communication network point of view and the power system. So which devices are critical for the redundancy of the communication network and which devices are critical for the redundancy of the power systems, such as the IEDs and so on. And from the physical layout point of view, we have looked at it in detail and reviewed the physical layout of the secondary system and where devices should be placed to allow better maintenance or higher availability times and faster replacements inside the substation. Yeah, and as I already said, we looked in detail in the communication network aspects of the substation, because we believe that this is a very important topic in the future, and we need to understand as well how the communication network will affect the system. And then we tested several protocols, as the one I've mentioned, that we believe will gain greater importance in future substations. Yeah, and from this, we wanted to test all these concepts, and before implementing them in the field, it's important to make sure they work. And yeah, we simulated the communication network inside the substation, the switches, and so on. We have analyzed the traffic patterns of the communication network inside the substation, the typical traffic patterns, how the impact of delays in the communication network can impact the performance of the power system. For example, a delay in sending a message from one point to the other, it can delay the tripping of a device, and how this delay might compromise the stability of the system, for example. Yeah, we have conducted a reliability analysis to see how the loss of one equipment can affect the communication network, similar to what we do with the N-1 criteria in the power system. We wanted to look at it from the communication point of view, how the loss of components affect its performance. And then interoperability concept with IEC 61850 standard. We have entered in partnerships with several manufacturers for testing real interoperability concepts. And as you can see here, this is a picture of our lab in which we implemented, this is a demonstration of a substation bay in which we have devices from different manufacturers operating with each other and communicating with each other. Yeah, and lastly but not least, we have developed this co-simulation platform to test how the two worlds, the communication and power system world, they interact with each other, as I've previously mentioned. Yeah, and this concept is now in the stage of going to the field, and what we hope is that we can start some trials in the year of 2019. So yeah, so this was a short overview on some of the projects and some of the concrete innovations that we are working on. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for showing what research is doing these days. What are the questions from the audience? We have a few minutes, please. Yes, microphone, please, second row here. And state your name, please. And
yeah. My name is Khouloud Kalthoum, and thank you so much for sharing this with us. Yesterday was held in Coimbra a workshop about the future of substation, mainly for medium voltage and low voltage. I'm wondering if you are aware about Next Step project under leadership of IFASEC, and EDP Distribution is part of this as a sponsor. So I'm wondering, they are working about the substations, about the sensors. So that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard about some projects that are ongoing regarding that. I'm not sure if it's about the substation. Yeah, it's probably, yeah, secondary, so medium to low voltage, which is a little bit different. So, but yeah, but here what we are looking at is transmission network and transmission substations. Although some of these concepts can be as well used in distribution substation, but for high voltage levels and not so much for the low voltage level.
I have also a question to you.
Okay.
Sorry, it sounds a little bit nasty, but it's just to provoke perhaps discussions here. When you talk about the DSO-TSO relationship, do you assume they are competitors or cooperative entities in the future?
Yep. Yeah.
Do we know enough about that? Should we do research on that?
Yeah, we are working on, in the scope of the project, we are working for fostering cooperation. So we believe they can, yeah, each one has its own business. So, but we believe that fostering this cooperation has immediate benefits for the system in terms of global optimization, not only from an operational point of view, but also from the planning point of view. If each one can cooperate in their activities with each other, I think there's immediate benefits in making the system more efficient. And yeah.
So the question we ask here shouldn't all be perfectly answered. That's not the idea of this workshop. You know, we can ask questions which are open where we need more studies. You know, so let's raise these things here. Another one, you know, you do forecasting.
Yeah.
We still need forecasting.
Sorry?
Do we still need forecasting? Let's say if we have a small aggregation, we could just use storage and flatten things out.
Yeah, that's the future, not the present. So we are working on concrete solutions for now, and that's not the actual situation, especially in Portugal.
Very good. We can later talk in the round table about these things. And just the third one, you know, we had the German workshop. We had the workshop in the area of Central Europe with a lot of German participation. They also talk about inertia. Yeah. And you know that inertia gets lost, you know, we have non-rotating machines. They say this will be replaced by power electronics. Do you agree to that?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Some technologies are already capable to providing this capability, and we have some power plants actually working. I know at least some projects in the US in which we have huge wind power plants that are providing this service and working on this inertia, supporting this so-called synthetic inertia to the system. So yeah, I believe that this thing of the inertia will be possible to be provided by this kind of technologies, not only wind, but also solar power plants.
Very good. Yeah, it was my impression when I was reading the literature that in this region, in the western region, the term inertia is the highest in all of Europe. For whatever reason, others talk about it, but it doesn't seem to be at the level which seems to be here in Spain and Portugal. That's my impression. Maybe this is because there's more substitution than in other areas of rotating machines, who knows, huh? But this is to me a subject still to be researched a little bit more in depth. But we can talk about that later. Thank you very much. And I think we are a little bit late, but anyway, I hope the discussions are interesting. And we are going now for coffee, and for that, please, the coffee will be outside of the building, but you will be guided where it is, and please, let's come back in 15 minutes, at 4 o'clock, please. Thank you.